climb, the cooler it gets. That's nature for you. Some days up here you can see forever. Other days, not the nose on your face. But one thing's certain. You go back home knowing you've seen the world in a new way. And next time someone asks, "Where have you been lately?" you tell them, "Well, not the city, that's for sure."
Well, of course, the cities were all powered by coal and horseback riding, so they were nasty places to be. So the idea to get away to the country and see the natural world was a real attraction, and that's what got tourism going.
Thanks to Sylvester Marsh and the Boston, Concord, and Montreal Railroad, you can board a train in New York City in the morning and watch the sunrise on Mount Washington the next. Talk about a trip.
It's a great thrill, just the idea of getting above timberline and getting on the top of New England, the highest peak in the Northeast, and say, "I did this, and I'm there I am up there," and I'm not going to tell you I took the train. I'm going to say I might have hiked up there, but but you got there, and then that was the thing. You had to arrive on the summit. You had to be a part of that mountaintop experience.
Thanks to the publicity of Harper's Weekly and the Kilburn brothers' stereopticon views of the White Mountains, everybody and his brothers, and sisters, and aunts, uncles, nieces, and nephews dream of escaping the noisy, crowded, dirty cities and finding peace and quiet. Well, not so quiet when it comes to the COG steam engines.
As an engineer running it, they were dynamic machines, and you really had to feel it and massage that thing up the hill and be in tune with your fireman, in tune with the locomotive. And it was a brakeman. That was your time to shine, was in the switches, to show off to the people and show what you could do and impress your engineers and impress your fellow brakemen.
Up the tourists go to enjoy the view, and then down they come to enjoy all the comforts of home and then some at one of New Hampshire's grand hotels. Like beautiful ocean liners moored in the White Mountains, these majestic hotels open their Gilded Age doors to those who can afford to spend more than just a weekend.
And they would come with their trunks and stay for the summer. So they were grand. They had to have all those services that they would expect at their grand home back in Philadelphia or Washington or New York or Boston. So they wanted the same kind of services they had of all their maids and butlers and stuff back home. So they had to provide that. And the hotels were somewhat self-sufficient, so you didn't have to leave.
And they don't. Summer after wonderful summer. The die is cast, and it comes up sevens for the Mount Washington COG Railway. Every day, its powerful little steam engines shove their jam-packed passenger cars head first up a 3-mile journey through the clouds to reach the summit, where not only a hotel awaits them, but a regular little city, including a post office and a weather observatory. Meanwhile, down at the base camp, they're counting money hand over happy fist. Any wonder nobody notices a new sound coming up on the other side of the mountain?
This became the resort area in the Northeast for many, many, many years, and that's what resulted in the grand hotels and all the advancing tourism. This was the place to come. You came by train, but later on the automobile kind of killed the grand hotels, and they all went west.
But the little engine that could stayed behind, along with the mountain it knew so well. While it takes millennia to change the face of Mount Washington, Human beings change what's on top in record time. First comes the tiny tip-top house, hanging on for dear life during that snowstorm in 1857. It gave shelter to and was the inspiration for Sylvester Marsh's Railway to the Moon, and so much more.
I think a lot of people expect to find barren wasteland at the top of Mount Washington. They've heard so much about it. But there's a state park at the summit, and the other side of the coin is there's an 1853 stone building. So you have everything from the observatory to a modern building and a stone hostel. It's a wonderful little village at the top of Mount Washington.
There's a wonderful print, a bird's eye view, which shows the top of Mount Washington in 1902. And you see how it really was a city among the clouds. The large Summit Hotel, which really was the focal point. You could compare with the grand hotels in the valleys, but on the top of the mountain, it was relatively posh. There was an observation tower. You could climb up and see the view all the way around the summit. They needed it, such an open summit. There was a printing office for Among the Clouds, which was a newspaper that was printed on top of Mount Washington. So it was a very lively place. It must have been wonderful in the evenings on those rare, quiet, clear summer evenings to be out, enjoying the views, enjoying the sunset, with dozens of others, perhaps 100 or more others, who shared your interest in the mountain scenery.
Day to day, you never know what Mother Nature's got in store for you up on the mountain. The minute you think you've got it all sorted out, you find out otherwise.
The nature of going on Mount Washington is you never know what you're going to get. In some ways, it's like a fortune cookie. You can open it up and it could be good news or perhaps not so good.
The winds can go from 10 or 15 miles an hour to 150 miles an hour in the course of 2 or 3 days. So you are taking care of these trains, which can be quirky and a challenge, and you cannot take care of the weather on the mountains, so you have to be nimble, you have to be prepared.
Some people actually like bad weather. I mean, I'll go up on the summit when it's really windy and snowy, and I kind of like it. It's some people expect it. It's some of the worst weather in the world, and it lives up to that.
If you spend a lot of time on the mountain, like the folks who work here, you feel about as small as you really are in the scheme of things. Nature can do that. And it darn well did to the COG, starting not with snow, but wind that fanned the flames of fire and burnt everything to the ground.
But the summit never really had the same panache that it had had before them. And some of that, I would say, relates to changes that were occurring in American society and in the White Mountains at that time. That was when the railroads were starting to diminish in their importance. That was when private automobiles were beginning to increase in their importance, because people enjoyed having the freedom of driving around to go where they wanted to, when they wanted to, and not having to rely on railroad tracks or railroad schedules.
The automobile has come not only to stay, it's about to pass them by. And then, just when things seem to be sorting themselves out, the stock market crash of 1929 turns everything upside down. And with folks scrambling to make ends meet, riding up a mountain is the last thing they want to do. And they don't. Things finally get so bad, the Boston and Maine throws in the towel, and they get out of the COG railway business for good. And our story should end right here, except someone shows up who's crazy enough and willing enough to make a silk purse out of a coal-burning, debt-ridden sow's ear of a railroad. Meet Colonel Henry Teague.
Now, Henry Teague was, some would say, a showman. Teague knew that the value of the COG railroad was not just to bring passengers, but to be an attraction in and of itself and to get people to Mount Washington. So he ran it as an attraction, not a railroad. And he really was a major force in making that much more of a success, and ultimately the success that it is today.
Thanks to the financial backing of the Boston and Maine Railroad, he gets all of this for a song. And with the kind of hard work, determination, and grit of his predecessors, he turns that song into a symphony. Gone are the B&M Railroaders. Here come strapping, strong college students, ready, willing, and able to shoulder the load up and down the mountain every day. Colonel Teague reinvents the cogwheel. Gone are the days of grand hotels and summer-long vacations for the upper crust to savor a royal view. Enter the rest of America to enjoy it too. Nothing, it seems, can stop Colonel Teague. But the devastating New England hurricane of 1938 did slow him down.
Not only was Jacob's Ladder Trestle completely demolished, it just was not there after the hurricane. The track was literally flipped over upside down like a ribbon.
But with a determined army of workers and money borrowed from his alma mater, Dartmouth College, Colonel Teague straightens every ribbon and rebuilds the storm-damaged railroad in time for opening day that summer. In fact, the only thing that stops the Colonel is that which stops us all. After his death in 1951, the COG kept running under the leadership of his protege, Arthur Teague. Not related by blood, but by spirit, Art understood, like Marsh and everyone who's ever worked on the COG, or ever will, that getting to the summit is what it's all about, not only for mountains, but for life. First hired on as a college student during Henry Teague's reign, young Art worked summers on the COG until he leaves to fight in World War II. Much decorated Colonel Teague returns home when war's end. He hangs up his uniform, grabs a coal shovel, and takes over running and eventually owning one of the world's shortest and steepest railroads. Weather out on Washington can be as changeable as life itself. One minute it's blue skies, the next a blizzard. The Teague family has its share of both during Arthur's tenure. After years of growth and prosperity, tragedy strikes with Arthur Teague's untimely death in 1967, followed by the loss of his daughter Lucy in an automobile accident just weeks later. Then disaster strikes the COG Railway, when a derailment causes the first passenger-related deaths in its long history. And while new safety measures are put in place to keep this from ever happening again, it's still enough sorrow to make anybody say, enough is enough. But Arthur's wife, Ellen Crawford Teague, isn't just anybody. She has two mountains to climb now, one with snow and one with tears. And as the new owner and manager of the COG Railway, climb them both she does.
Ellen Teague was a feisty mountain woman, you might say, but she grew up as a socialite in Philadelphia. And here she came to the mountains. She was an engineer, she was a president of a railroad, and so you came in kind of in awe of this woman who had kind of tamed this mountain.
To top off Ellen Teague's tenure, in 1980, the Sherman Adams Visitor Center crowns the summit. A proud new addition to draw visitors to the top and a place to study something everybody talks about but can't do anything about, the weather, as reported to the world from the Mount Washington Observatory.
Hello from the summit of Mount Washington. Looking at the weather map, low pressure will move through eastern Canada today, dragging a cold front across the state. This passing front will bring a return of summer fog and light snow.
And study it they do, round the clock, day after day, year after year, answering to the world that keeps asking, what's the weather like today?
Mount Washington is originally as a private nonprofit organization. We were established in 1932. We were involved in a number of activities related to education, environmental monitoring, and scientific research. Sylvester Marsh gave permission to Hitchcock and Huntington, the two people involved in a scientific expedition on the mountain who studied mountain's weather. Marsh gave them permission to spend a winter in one of the COG buildings on top of the mountain.
And they're still studying the weather today. Rain or shine, sun or snow, year in and year out. Time takes its toll on all things. On mountains, it's measured in millennia, but in human terms, years. And after 14 successful years of running the COG Railway, after Arthur Teague's death, Helen Teague finally comes down from the mountain in 1983. Three times in history, just as the COG is about to puff its last, folks as determined and strong as the cogs that grip the ladder track show up to keep the trains running. Can it happen again? Or will Sylvester Marsh's dream finally become just a footnote in a dusty old New Hampshire history book? When Ellen Teague came down the mountain in 1983, she met folks who wanted to keep going up.
And here we were, young people from the North Country, taking this over, taking her baby away from her in a way. But she was so gracious. She came back every year when the mountain opened, told us what she suggested we would do, talked to her boys. All the engineers that were there were really her children. And so we used her information, we used her support.
Not much has changed on Mount Washington for billions of years. But for the little railroad that still climbs it, an awful lot has changed since 1869, when Sylvester Marsh started things rolling.
The engine pushing us up the mountain, we build our own engines. This one is the M2. It's the second of the 5 biodiesels that we built. The average grade on a COG railway is 25%, with the steepest grade being up on Jacob's Ladder of 37.41% grade.
All journeys begin with a single step, and just as ours began with the chuff of a historic steam engine, nowadays it starts with a mighty roar. As the Mount Washington COG Railway biodiesel digs in for the final push to the top.
The real advantage to biodiesel is that it's the only EPA-designated advanced biofuel produced in the country. It reduces emissions by 80% from conventional diesel.
It does something the steam trains couldn't do. It gets you up the mountain faster. The running time is shorter. There's no real delays along the way. And the passengers, with the windows are open in the coaches, they're not bombarded with cinders from the start. Believe me, I'm a cycle of steam engine, but I'm also a realist.
This place has gone through many modernizations along the way. It went from wood, on a vertical boiler to coal on a horizontal boiler, and probably everywhere along the way people said, oh, that's going to kill it if you do that. So it's still a great machine that climbs a great mountain, and you have to appreciate that part of it, and I still do.
You can't argue with success, and our ridership has continued to increase since we brought on the biodiesel locomotives, and they're what customers today expect in terms of an experience, so they're great.
But the biodiesel didn't happen overnight by someone waving a magic wand. Instead, it was all hands on deck, a ton of hard work, and a lot of cooperation to move the COG Railway from the past into the future without going off the rails.
It was a challenge
to design something new and build something new, and working with Al and all the people here that had their input to it. You know, it was consuming once we got into the thing. You know, we started off as a $60,000 project to build a little workstation, and we ended up as a $600,000 project. So, you know, it just kept evolving every day.
Put a lot of trust in that, actually. I was surprised for a small company we did. Some projects that really cost a lot of money, and say it failed.
What do you think of that?
Would have been a big hit on the profit. Yeah, he was always pretty relaxed about things.
We spent days and days banging ideas back and forth.
Okay, I'll go get by the
He'd come back and he'd say, well,
No, they're not.
we can do it this way, and then I'd say, well, you know, what if that fails? How we make up for that? And everything we've done, we've designed so there's redundancy in it, so that if something fails, it's always a That's probably the most unique part of the design.
As far as the differences between the diesels and steam engines, of course, first of all, the steam engines goes to about a ton of power. The diesels can go for less than 18 gallons of petrol. Secondly, you have to run the pad if you don't need a fireman. You always have an engineer. The steam engines goes for that too. You have an engineer and fireman. Another thing is that to run a steam engine requires a lot of training, a lot of experience. The diesel is much less.
By the time you get to the top of Mount Washington, it's like being in Labrador. That is going through three distinct climactic zones. Stand up. It seems new every time because I'm with guests who have not been up before. The kid is pointing out the window and the mother is hanging out the window and the father is holding them back and they're pointing and they're showing and they're standing up and tipping in the train. It is so much fun. I enjoy it like the first time because they're enjoying it like the first time.
There's a place where I stand up on the coach on the way up on Jacob's Ladder, where I actually put my feet 1 foot inside the coach in the doorway. And when I stand up straight in the doorway, my head is actually a foot outside the coach. And that's when people really realize that we're on a steep grade. At that point, the seats on the uphill end of the coach are 8 feet higher in elevation than the seats on the uphill.
Most folks commute to work in the morning, while others work at home. But some climb mountains instead, and they don't do it alone.
We've been blessed with what I would call the dream team over the last 20 years. We've just had a really talented and dedicated crew that have helped. You know, it's one thing to have the vision for these projects, and it's one thing to have the money to put into the projects, but it's another thing to actually make them happen.
There's been so many different types that make it here at the COG. I don't think you could, pigeonhole one type of person.
All right, stuff.
There's just a very